Hi guys, welcome to this video. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to make this. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing you want to do is just go down to the link in the description, and if you click through you'll come to this collection on Sketchfab of CCO models, which mean they are a collection of public domain cultural heritage 3D models, and you can use them for free. There's like photogrammetry scans from museums, and they scan in their objects, put them online. You can use them in your scenes for free. It's constantly getting updated. You can see here that there's these corals. These weren't here last time I was on the collection. And you just want to scroll through this until you find something interesting. I'm going to go down and find maybe... I'll go for this angel statue. You want to pick what you want. You can look around it in the viewer. You can left click to orbit around it, and you can use the right mouse to pan, or the middle mouse to pan. So now if we scroll down, you can see download 3D model, and it's worth noting that it tells you the geometry here, so 526,000 triangles. That's quite a high poly model, so depending on your system specs, it might be a bit too high. But what you can do is if you download the model and then click download OBJ, which is something I've already done for this model, and then you're going to get a download folder, so you can extract that to wherever you want, and then it'll depend on how it's being packaged by the people, but you want to go through, it's usually in source, and then I had another folder here that was zipped, so I've extracted that, and then inside that one you see there's an OBJ file, and we've got the textures here for the model. So with everything downloaded and unzipped, if you go through to Blender, delete the default cube, and then if we go up to File, Import, OBJ, and if we just paste in or navigate to where you have downloaded the OBJ file, you can click OBJ, and it'll take a while to bring it in, because again, it is a highly dense model. Okay, so once it's imported, sometimes you get this like weird mouse cursor, but I can see that the file is over here. And I can also see that if I press N and go into my side panel, that this is 33 meters tall, which isn't what we want really. That's going to be way too big. You want to kind of work at real world scales in Blender. I mean, this statue could have been 33 meters tall, but for what we want, like portrait style, we want it kind of around the height of like humans, so like a photographer was actually kind of up close to it. And you can see its origin points over here, and we want, so when we rotate it, it's rotating around its origin point, which isn't what we want. Well, we do want that, but we don't want it over here. So I'm going to go up to Options, click Effect Origins Only, and then press G, Y, and I'm just going to move the origin point. You can see that it's moving here. Just going to bring that over to the model, and then I'm going to uncheck that option, and then with the model selected, press Alt-G to clear its positions. Now it should be in the world center. And then I'm just going to rotate this, so it's I'm going to press RX 90 minus, just so it's pointing upwards, and then RZ 180 just to flip it around, and then maybe just bring it down slightly. Okay, so we can see here that faces is 526,000, which is quite high just for this model, especially because we want to do volumetrics and particles as well. If you can't see this down here, by the way, you can right click. I think by default now it's just like this. You can right click and click Scene Statistics, that brings that in. If your computer is struggling to kind of process the model because it is so high poly, you can come over to the Modifiers tab with your object selected and add in the, where is it? You can add in the decimate modifier, which is here. So you can see this ratio here. So this is 100%, and it's 526,000 faces. If we went down to 0.1 and then just let that calculate, you can see that that's now 52,000 faces. So it's it's a ratio. 52,000 faces, you can see that it has gone a bit blocky. If we go into the material preview, you can see that it's got some kind of issues here. So I'm just going to bring it up to say 0.4. Let's just see if that helps. Okay, so that's fine. So that's brought it down to 210,000 faces. which is a lot better. There is still obviously some issues. What you can do is you can apply that, and then that changes the geometry. I'm just gonna get rid of it for now because I've got a good computer, so I should be fine with this. Obviously, it's better quality when it's the highest it can be. So I'm just going to bring it down, and then I'm going to scale it down as well, just so it says about 5 meters here. Yep, that'll do. And then I'm going to press period on the number pad to zoom in, Control A. I'm just going to apply that scale, and then I'm going to bring it up again, just on that ground plane, just so we can keep our scene organized. Okay, so I'm just going to take a minute to save my project, just in case there's any issues with this. I'm going to go into tutorial projects and CCO model tutorial. So bring that in. Okay, so that's the actual model done. So now we just want to add in the lighting and the particle system. So I'm going to press Shift A and add in a, oh no, sorry, there's already a camera in this scene. So I'm just going to press 0 on the number pad to go into the camera. You might need to add one in if you don't have a camera. I'm just going to press Shift and then apostrophe on the keyboard, and that lets you fly the camera that lets you fly the camera like you're in a video game with WASD. Q goes down, E goes up. You look around with the mouse, and this just really lets you position the camera exactly where you want it. What I am going to do is I'm just going to come over to the dimensions, and for my scene, I'm going to flip this around. So 1080 by 1920, just so it's portrait for like a phone back, like you can do it on a background or like a Instagram story or a TikTok or something. And then with my camera still selected, I'm going to come over to the camera tab. I'm going to come down to viewport display, and I'm going to bring the pass part out up to 1. That just cuts down the kind of background so we can only see what's inside the camera. And I'm going to open up a side thing here, and I'm going to press N to get rid of that, T to get rid of that one, home on the keyboard to bring it into full screen. I'm going to hide gizmos and the sort of background. So now in this window, I can have this as my 3D view. I'm just going to bring this down to sort of here. And then to get a good sort of like depth of field effect, I'm just going to bring the camera back, so to there, and then I'm going to bring the focal length up to say 150, maybe 175. I'm just going to bring that in a bit, just so we can go to there, bring it up, maybe bring that across, just so it's in the center. Okay, so with that done, I'm going to come over to the world tab here. I'm just going to drop this down to 0, just so the world setting's black. And I'm going to go over to Eevee. I'm going to scroll across here and then just flick this into the rendered mode. And I'm going to add on bloom. You can do ambient occlusion if you want, because it's going to be quite a dark scene. It might not help, it probably won't do anything, and it might slow your computer down, but check it on if you, like on a case-by-case basis, it might work. I'm just going to bring up the intensity of the bloom. I'm going to enable screen space reflections just to get a bit more of the play there. Under shadows, I'm going to check high bit depth and just bring the cube size up to 1024. The higher you go on this, the higher the number, the better quality the shadows will be. And then I'm actually going to just delete this light here. Just so we can relight the scene from scratch how we want it. So if I press Shift A and then add in a light and then get an area light, I'm just going to bring that up, bring it out over here, rotate this just so it's pointing at the model, scale it up slightly, bring it back, and then I'm going to give this a orange glow. And then bring up the power. Shadow, contact shadows. Bring up that power. We can adjust these later on. Go for nice yellowy orange, kind of like that. Just gonna bring this round. Maybe bring it a bit closer. Hit it. So what I'm trying to do is, because of this model having quite a lot of depth to it, because there's the wings, and you can see there's the wings in the back, and then the main body, and then her arms and legs are in the front. So there's a lot of interesting shadow there. So I'm just going to bring it kind of maybe kind of like to there. Oh, that's... Okay, and then I'm going to press Shift D and duplicate this light and bring it over this side, and then just rotate it around. And then I'm going to reduce its power just to about sort of half, and I'm going to make this one, just going to make this a blue light, and then I'm going to bring it kind of a bit further back, maybe rotate it. And what I'm trying to do is I just want to get these shadows, so they're not black. I kind of want to just like bring them up just so they've got like a nice blue color to them. Maybe go back on this line, bring this up. And again, now is just the time to sort of like play around and kind of get a lighting setup that you like. I'm just gonna go for something like that. Again, this is just personal preference. I just want to get something quick set up to show you guys. Okay, so the next thing is we want to just add a bit of volumetric fog to this. So I'm gonna press Shift A and add in a cube. And scale the cube up just so it fills our scene. You can maybe scale it on the Z-axis just to bring it up like this. Gonna bring it kind of like that. Depending on how this looks, I might end up expanding it so it encompasses the camera as well. But for now, with the cube selected, I'm gonna go to the Object Properties tab, go into Viewport Display, and then change it from textured to bounds. And that just lets us see through it. And then over in the Material tab, just going to add in a new material, and then under Surface, I'm going to click Remove, and then in under Volume, I'm going to click here and add in a Principled Volume shader. And then you can see we've got our volume. It's quite thick, so we can't actually see our statue anymore. So I'm just going to bring the density down to sort of 0.1, maybe 0.5. Oh, 0.05, sorry. I'm going to come over into the render settings and under volumetrics. I'm going to check on volumetric shadows. Okay, I'm just going to extend this just so the camera's inside it and it doesn't really have an effect. So what I think we need to do is just bring up our the power of our lights, possibly. There we go. Maybe go back to the volume, go into here, maybe 0.025. Okay, so that just adds a nice little glow to it. There we go, so we've got a nice bit of volumetric glow over here, a bit of glow over there. Again, just play with this until you're happy with it. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is I'm going to go into solid mode. I'm going to shift right click on the angel's head just to place the 3D cursor up there. I'm going to press Shift A, add in a mesh plane. I'm going to scale it up, and then I'm going to press Control A to apply its scale, and then I'm going to flip it on the x-axis to 180, just so it's pointing downwards. If you want to make sure that it's pointing in the right direction, if you come up here and then turn on back face culling, you'll see that the back of the plane will disappear. So if you can see the face, that's the direction that the plane's pointing. So that's one way to find that out. So I can see that it's pointing downwards now. I'm just going to bring that up. And then we want to go over to the Particle Settings tab, add in a new particle. You can call it whatever you want. And then I'm just going to come down kind of like to here, just add in, just shift right click the cursor there. Press Shift A, Mesh, and then add in an icosphere. 2 subdivisions is probably fine. You can go down to 1 if you wanted. But I want a kind of nice smooth ball here. Just going to scale it down and press Control A, apply the scale. And then if you come over to the Material Properties tab, add a new material. Under Surface, remove the Principled BSDF, and then you can just add in an emission. And then if you pick kind of whatever color you want, so you might want to go complementary. So I've got the orange light and the blue light. I'll make my orb kind of like a nice orangey color. I can preview that by going into rendered mode, that I can see that that's glowing. And shift right click that off. So with our plane selected, if we go back to the particle system setting, and then under render, We want to change from halo to object, and then with the pipette, we can select our icosphere, and then we just let them fall. You can see that now it's emitting these particles and they're glowing orange. You can make them brighter, obviously, under the emission settings, so we can bring the strength up, you can get that nice glow. So under the particle settings, we want to come down to field weights and just remove the gravity from them, just so we can control the flow of them a bit better. Under scale, you can bring these up to sort of however big you want them in your scene, and then obviously play with the scale randomness, and that gets a bit more variation there. Under velocity, that's kind of how fast they're pushed out of the plane and emitted, and then so they're going to get, with no gravity, they'll get pushed out and then they'll just carry on at that kind of speed as if there was no gravity. So I'm just going to reduce this to 0.15 for the time being, and then scroll back and then just like watch that play. So now they're going to emit. Oh, I don't know what happened there. Sometimes with your particles, if you press G and move it, and you see this red bar here, that's kind of the cache. So I'm just going to bring that to frame 1. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it down until it appears in the frame like that, and then I'm just going to bring it up again, just so they don't have as far to travel. Okay, and then let's try that again. So you see that they kind of emit and they come down. What's happening here is they're dying before they get to the bottom, so what we want to do is increase the lifetime. This is a good time to set how long you want your animation and the frame rate and everything. So I'm going to go over to output properties. I'm going to change the frame rate to 30 and then put the end frame at 300 frames, for example. So that's going to be 10 seconds. Let's just scroll out so I can see this. Maybe bring up the timeline just slightly. Just so this is our timeline now. So at frame 1, if we go back to our particle settings, we can see that the frames start, so it's going to start emitting at frame 1, and it's going to stop emitting them at frame 200. And currently, they're going to last for 50 frames. So by frame 200, the 1000th particle will be emitted, and then we should see that they die out around frame 250, and there's no more particles left. So currently, 1000 particles aren't being emitted a second or anything. There are 1000 particles, and it will distribute them over between frame start and frame end, and each particle is going to last for 50 frames. So we'll see at frame 250, the last one kind of dies off. What you want is this to sort of go through to the end of it. So you can, if you set the lifetime to 100. And then leave the end at 200, providing that you've got a 300 frame animation. And then go back, let it play. So you see that they're lasting longer now, which means they're getting further down. So at frame 200, the last one will be emitted, but then the last one doesn't die until frame 300, which is kind of what you want, because you want the last one to die off at frame 300, so then it loops back around at frame 0 and they start appearing again. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring up the number to sort of 2000, and then I'm just going to shift right click into the middle of the angel, kind of in the middle of the camera scene here. I'm just going to press Shift A and add in a force field, and then I'm going to add in a vortex, and I'm just going to scale this up and then rotate it on the Y a little bit, and then rotate it on the Z, just so it's kind of an interesting angle. And then what this is going to do is, as the particles come down, they're going to get caught up in this vortex and swirl around. This is a bit too strong at the minute, so with the vortex selected, we can go over to the object data properties for it. With the object selected, we can go over to the physics properties here. And then we just want the strength to come down to sort of 0.25. So we want it to affect them, but just not like as the same amount. But we want it to affect them, but just kind of have like a very gentle tug on them. So you see now that they're coming down. So So if I bring this actually into the middle, and then bring this back, and then just so in the final render that this doesn't appear, you can click the particle properties, and then uncheck down here, show emitter. So you see that these appear, and then they swirl around the vortex. And then if we quickly render this, you'll see that you can't actually see the plane because it's because we've unchecked show emitter, and obviously that's emitting the particles. Okay, so now this is in the middle of our scene. What we might want to do actually is if we bring down, just bring the velocity down even further to sort of 0.05. Let's just see what that looks like. Okay, so now you see that they appear and then they pull around. They get pulled around the vortex. Let's just bring that up a bit. Okay, so one of the last things we might want to do is if we go down under the particle settings, all the way down here, under textures, if we click new and then click this little button here, that takes you to the texture we've just created. And then under image or movie, set this to blend. Under coordinates, we pick strand and particle. Under influence, if you uncheck general time and check size, what that's going to do is anything that's black will mean the scale of the particle is 0, so it won't be visible. Anything that's white means that it will be its scale 100%, so that'll be as big as it appears here. And what we want it to do is we want it to go from scale 0, gradually grow over its lifetime, and then gradually disappear again to fade out. This is really good for sort of like dust particles as well, and this is how you do it. So once you've checked size under influence, and then you've changed your coordinates, if you come down to colors, and then check on color ramp, and then if you click the black, marker here, and then just change the alpha up to 1, and then if we bring the white in to the middle, and then add another point in, bring that across, make that black. So you'll see now that our color ramp goes from black to white to black. And how that works is if we come over here, you'll see now that they grow in size, they get really big, and then they fade out. This is a good way of doing like embers on a fire, that kind of thing. So you see our particles are emitted, they get swirled around the vortex, and then they fade out again. If you don't want them to kind of emit from a plane and you just want them to kind of like be in the scene, what you can do is if we just move this plane out of the way for a second, if you add in a mesh cube and just scale that to sort of fit around the angel, you can add the particle setting. You can add the particle system that we've made by clicking up here to add a new particle setting, and then attach in the one that we made for the plane. And then under emission and source, change it from emit from faces to emit from the volume. And then if we go to viewport display, change that to bounds. So you see now what happens. Is they're emitted from inside the volume, so they don't fall down. They kind of appear inside this cube and then get swirled around the vortex. Doing it this way, unfortunately, you can't see what they're like inside the rendered view anymore. I'm not 100% sure why. But if we just come to render image, oh, sorry, so you do that, and then if you come under here, you need to uncheck show emitter again. That's why that wasn't working. So let's just do that. You can see in this view that they appear. If we go to render image, you'll see that now our particles are in the scene. And they're emitting from that volume, so it depends what you want. With the plane method, obviously they emitted from the middle and they kind of like swirled around. With the volume, they're just in the scene and then they fade in and out. And you can see that here. I believe that's because in viewport display, we changed it to display as bounds. So you can see them if you do send it back to textured, and then make this so big that the camera's inside it, then you can see them. But obviously that's then spreading out the particles across this whole volume, and you want them concentrated on the angel. So I mean, that's how you can get around that. So if the camera is inside the box, you will see the particles, but obviously you're putting particles where the camera can't see them because it can only see around here. So if we make the cube here, obviously now the camera can see the cube unless we render it. But and the reason that's happening is because we have show emitter unchecked. But because you can see the emitter in the rendered view inside Blender, you need to go over to viewport display, change that to bounds, just so we can still see inside, but then we lose track of the particles, because you can see that even the particles are now being rendered as bounds. But if you render it, it works. So it's a bit of a pain. It's just kind of one of those flaws. It's a bit of a pain. It's just a flaw with Blender. But you can do it how you want. If you wanted to increase the box so you could see it in this window here, then you might need to increase the particle size or the particle density just so you have more concentrated in your area, but obviously that's slower because you have more particles being rendered. So yeah, if you want this to be an animation and kind of rotate as I did, what you could do is you could come to frame 1, press I, set a keyframe for the statue's rotation, and then come to frame 300, press RZ359, and then press I and set the rotation, and then press A in the timeline to select your keyframes, press T, click linear. So now you'll see that that rotates round as all this stuff's swirling around, and you should see that this should be a seamless loop with everything fading out and then fading back in. So there you go, just rotates round. So you could render this out at 300 frames. Let's just get it to sort of there, click render. And there you go. That's the kind of, that's how to get these Sketchfab models and add in the particle system that all swirls around. If you want the project files, they will be available on my Patreon to download, along with the project files for all my other tutorials. If you make something in this style, it'd be great to see it. So if you could like tag me on Instagram, obviously all my links are in the below. You can tag me on Instagram or Twitter. If you like the video, hit that like button. If you want to subscribe to see more in the future, that would be appreciated. But yeah, thanks for watching, and until next time, bye.